All right, go live. Good. Okay. All right, friends, and we are live.
Is it working?
I think so.
All right, sweet.
Okay, wait, I'm going to. It should be okay. Okay, yes. Yeah, it is working. Wait, I don't know where the audio is coming from. So, okay, I see. I always have this problem. I just call it part of the. We literally tested this like 10 minutes before. So I think it should be good. Yes, it's good now. Hello, hello, friends. Bonjour Limit, Legends collabing. Oh, yes. Nia and Alex, finally, huh? Christian Lewis, hello, Tina. Hello, Tina. How's it going? We're doing good. We're doing good. Thank you guys all so much for joining. So, I'm sure I don't need to give that much of an introduction to the amazing person that you see here, but we will wait for maybe like a couple minutes or so before we jump straight into it. Hi from Turkey. Where are you guys coming in from? So, Alex, you are on East Coast time. Remind me again, it's not Virginia. North Carolina.
No,
North Carolina.
I'm in Charleston, South Carolina.
I was close.
Yeah, very close, very close.
South
I lived in
Carolina.
North Carolina for like 10 years. I lived right outside Charlotte and then went to school at East Carolina University, so I'm very familiar with North Carolina.
The Carolinas. I actually was
Yeah,
going to go to Duke at some point, which was in North Carolina, I think.
yeah,
Yeah.
great school. Yeah, two friends go there. Really good
Basketball
school.
school, apparently.
Very, very big basketball school. And right in that triangle is also UNC, NC State, Wake Forest, all really big competitive basketball programs.
Sports people.
Yeah. Yeah, that was smart. That was for smart people. That's why I didn't go there.
That's true. Apparently, people literally go there just for sports. Lima, Peru. Hi from Peru. Hello. The creators I have learned a lot from. Pleasure to see you both. Well, thank you. Audio is good. Thank you. We're all good. Everything is good for checking. Everything that they literally
Excellent.
made no sense. Everything is good to go. Hello from East Tennessee. Hi from Toronto. Ah, yes, University of Toronto, my undergraduate. I'm from Nebraska and I can't stay long. I got school. Oh, yeah, true. It's Friday. Thank you for popping in, though. Greetings from Indonesia, Texas. You are very perfect. We are very perfect, Alex.
Woohoo! I, I
Thank
I
you.
love Tennessee and Texas and Canada. All good
Canada.
places.
Azerbaijan, Indonesia, Texas, Kenya, West Virginia. Hello from Australia. Oh, thank you for making it, Australia. It is pretty late in Australia. Vancouver here. That's where I keep going to. Sweden, Habiba from Ghana, South Florida, Cape Town, South Africa. I have a couple Texas people here. Greetings from Qatar. Thank you guys all so much for joining. We are so excited for this. And Alex and I, we purposely made it so I don't know what's going to be on the presentations. I'm really interested in learning the future of AI and data analytics because Alex the analyst is the best person to talk about this. So yeah, I don't have any clue as to what he's going to be saying as well. So I'm genuinely very, very interested in knowing about this. Especially Alex, I'm sure like you're like in the midst of it. There's so many people talking about is AI gonna die? Like, is data analyst gonna die because of AI? Like, is it still worth? Is it still a career that's worth going into? All of these questions we will be answering. So I'm really excited to hear about that.
Yeah, me too. I'm excited to see what I say.
See what I say?
It could be anything.
All right. Okay, so before we're gonna get started, I just want to say that Alex has a platform called Analyst Builder, which is going to be launching very soon. If I understand, if I'm correct in that, Alex. So if you have not checked it out, I'm going to be pinning that in the pinned comment. So you should definitely check up on that. Sign up for the waitlist so you get notified. And for sorry, I just literally woke up. Like, ignore me if I don't make that much sense. Yeah, is that correct, Alex? It's going to be coming out pretty soon, and then people on the wait list are going to be able to get notified to sign up.
Yeah. Yeah. You go to analystbuilder.com, sign up for the wait list. You'll be a beta user, so you'll get everything really discounted and you get to like beta test a new learning platform, which will be really cool.
So I'm going to pin that. And also, I just want to say Lonely Octopus applications are now open. So if you're interested in learning about data and AI skills in order to work on real freelance projects from companies, you can also apply on Lonely Octopus. I'm going to pin both of these. So please do check it out. Let me just pin that. Okay, so pin comments and okay, cool. So I'm gonna pin this message and yeah, should we get started, Alex? You good?
Let's do it. I'm ready.
All right. I will share the screen for Alex's presentation. Get started. As
I'm just
always,
presenting. You're just gonna be you're just gonna be sitting there just like watching as well.
yeah, you let me know when I should move the slides.
Yeah, yeah, I'll let you know.
Yeah, let me know when you're going to be doing that. And also, as per usual for these live streams, if you have any questions in the chat, any of these, I'll be moderating and looking at those as well. So feel free to drop your questions here. Also, there will be a Q&A afterwards. So let's
Perfect.
make it
Yeah, I'm not gonna
interactive.
be looking at the chat at all. Like I don't even have it up on my screen, so I can't see it. So you just tell me if there's a good question out there. Um,
Will do.
but you go ahead. Yeah, this is the future of AI in analytics, lunch and learn with Alex the analyst. That sounds fun. I'd be there. But you can go ahead. You can go ahead and go to the next one, or go to the first one.
All right.
Oh yeah,
So the
nah,
agenda.
you can skip the. You can go. You do what you want to do. I'll just sit here for a second.
Well, here's the agenda. So we're gonna do an introduction. Alex is gonna talk about the state of data analytics, present to future, and looking beyond, and ending with a Q&A, a spicy Q&A. So,
Yep.
all right, Alex,
Yep.
give your introduction.
All right, I'll tell you a little bit about me and why I'm super interested in this topic in general, just because um, I've just been asked by it from 1,000 people, and that's probably a very low understatement because it's probably a lot more than that. And I've had to dive into it like crazy in depth. But if you don't know who I am, my name's Alex Freeberg, better known as Alex the Analyst on YouTube. I create content on data analytics. That's really what I do on YouTube. But besides that, I was a data analyst for many years. I was an analytics manager. Now I run my own consulting company for analytics, consulting with companies to help them with their analytics, go-to-market strategies, all these other things. And so that's who I am. And AI is honestly, it's just like completely changed the game. It's everybody's talking about it. It's the next big thing. It's amazing. And I love it personally. I think it's amazing. And there's a lot that is going to change over the years. And I have talked to a lot of people. So everything that I'm going to be talking about isn't only my viewpoint. It's also a lot of other people that I've talked to who I believe are a lot smarter than me in certain areas, and that's why I'd go to them. I'd be like, "Hey, listen, you're, the director at this company in analytics. Tell me about how you see AI impacting your company." So I would go and talk to them and just kind of get their insights on it. All of this is off camera, just like friends and people I've met through YouTube and people I've met through like my work. And so I don't really, that's not the kind of content I make on YouTube. And so I didn't, post that stuff, but maybe one day. So I have a lot of firsthand experience as well as I'm getting a lot of information from people who I think are probably even in some areas more equipped than I am. And so you can go to the next one. So I'm going to talk, like the agenda said earlier, I'm going to talk a little bit about what it is now. So how we currently do things in analytics, which is going to be pretty simple. And then I'm going to talk about how we're going to be doing things going forwards. I'm kind of talking about the next like 10 years. And then we're going to talk about the future, which is 10 years and beyond. At least that's like from my scale. So whenever you're ready, you can go to the next one. There we go. So this is the state of data analytics. And if at any point, Tina, you have any questions or you think something's interesting, you stop me because I can go. I'm going to start these like talking wheels and I will never stop if you don't stop me. Um, so the first thing is that right now, if you look at analytics across the entire, I'm just going to talk about the US, but it really applies to, you can apply it to almost anywhere in the world. But in the US right now, you'll see analytics teams or data analytics or data teams that have someone as a data analyst on their team. You see these mostly at medium and large size companies. You don't see a ton of them at a lot of smaller companies. Or if you do, it's a single data analyst, right? You just have one person. And so at these medium and large companies, uh, they have some type of data team for their data needs. Now, I'm going to take one tiny step back. When I'm talking about companies, I'm talking about companies that use technology as their main, that's what they do. They need technology to provide insurance, to provide, whatever. I'm not talking about like a mom and pop shop who, um, you know, goes out and cleans homes. They probably aren't going to be using data a lot, right? Um, and so this is mostly for established companies, medium to large size. That's where a lot of these data analytics teams are really established. So they have, dashboards and reports and flows of data that they have that's part of their process. They use that data for an intended output or goal for companies, or they sell it, or whatever they want to use it for. Now, this is important because in future slides, you'll see that this is going to change. And so that's where it is currently. And so you see large tech companies, Tesla, X, Amazon, all the Netflix, all these large companies use massive amounts of data. They have huge, huge, huge infrastructures and teams dedicated solely to data. That is all they do. Now, what do data analysts do specifically on these teams? This is a very condensed, simplified version of what they do, and I just wanted to keep it super simple. But on like a super simple level, our end goal, or what we output, is often dashboards and reports for stakeholders, or insights as well. But that's usually in the form of a dashboard, a report, an Excel file, an email, however you want to write this. So we produce these insights, we produce these dashboards and reports for people to then utilize on their teams. So that's what data analysts do right now. A lot of the work that goes in before that output is we clean and we analyze this data. So we're using tools like SQL, Excel, and Python, and those are 3 of hundreds. And I say that, and those are the 3 that I teach everyone, or I teach a lot on my channel to learn, because it's very transferable. You can use Excel in many different variations and different tools that are Excel-like. Same for SQL. Every database, you have to be able to get in the data and use it. If you know SQL, it's pretty transferable to a ton of other proprietary tools that companies may have. So these are some of the tools that you might use, but there's literally hundreds. And then at the end, a lot of what data analysts should be trying to do is also automate those repeatable tasks, especially with reports, dashboards, CSV files, all these things that you're sending out to people every month, every week. You should be trying to automate these things. Now, this is where we're currently at. And I'm saying current as in AI hasn't been fully integrated yet, and it will in the future. So look at it right now, even today. I consult with a lot of different companies. I go in, I'll consult with them, and I'm like, okay, show me what you got. Almost none of them have AI anywhere in their tech stack, except maybe if they're like asking it simple questions here and there for code snippets, things like that. It is not integrated. What I'm talking about is when I say it's integrated, think more like Microsoft Copilot. Copilot is going to be launched sometime soon. They've been teasing it for the past like 6 months. It's going to be launched sometime soon. And Copilot is very integrated into Outlook, into Word, all Microsoft products, all the way up into Azure. That is integration. And so when you're able to use these LLMs and AI at every single level, that's when it's going to be integrated. So we're not there yet. We have not gotten to the point where AI is actually fully integrated. We can use AI at a very simple level, but it's not fully integrated. So that's where we are currently. Now, I'm going to go to the next one in just a second, but the next 2, I'm going to talk a lot more about, because this is where I think most of the conversation needs to be held, at least on this topic. So I'm just kind of brushing on like, here's where we're at. This is where most people are comfortable with. This is what most people know. And then you can go to the next one. And I'll talk about this one for quite a while. And then the future one I think is even more interesting than this one. Am I talking too much, or can I keep going?
Please keep going.
Okay, I
No,
wasn't
that
sure.
was yeah, no, it's good. It's good. I think it's like a
Okay.
good foundation for
Okay.
everybody. So yeah, it's good. It's
All
good.
right. You interrupt me at any point. You just stop me. Um, so now we're gonna look at present to future. Oops, I shut my mic. we're going to look at present to future. So we're going to be taking a look at from kind of now to the next 10 years. That's where this time frame is. I didn't specifically put that, but that's where this time frame is. It could even be a little bit shorter, just depends on how fast things move. But I'm going to kind of talk why I'm saying 10 years instead of something like 3 to 5 years, and why I think a lot of people are a little bit too positive about the integration of AI in systems and how that will actually look. Now, earlier I said that we have data teams and data analysts traditionally at medium to large size companies. Not a ton of small companies hire a lot of data analysts, maybe just one. In the future, starting now, and I have talked about this actually for the past 6 months. I think in the next 2 to 3 years that this first bullet point is going to be very true, but then even more so in the long run, which is data teams are going to be a staple, even small companies, all the way up to large companies. And we didn't include small companies, or I didn't include small companies because again, most small companies don't have very large data teams. They maybe have one like database developer, or they have one data engineer, one data analyst. It's pretty small. And then they have other parts of their company that are more important at the moment. These are things like salespeople. These are people. These are things like IT support. All these different areas where they need people in those spots, so they don't have the budget or they don't invest in a data team. In the future, 3 years, 2 to 3 years is kind of my estimation, is a lot of more small companies are going to be popping up, not only popping up, but smaller companies that are already established today are going to need to be growing and investing in AI. And because of that, most of these people are not AI experts. Most people out there, especially for people in the data world like you and I, it seems very obvious. It's like, why don't people just do it themselves? But for other people, laymen, I talked to my father-in-law. I talked to other people who I would consider, if my father-in-law is watching this, it was not an insult. Other people who are kind of laymen's in the area, they do not understand it in the slightest. Now, I think I understand a lot, and I could totally see why people are like, well, you're not going to need data engineers in the future. You're not going to need data analysts in the future, data scientists. AI will be able to do it all. But that's not what people want to do. And they don't want to be the person to have to do it. So how are they going to integrate AI into their systems? They're going to hire people. Specifically, in my opinion, I didn't write this down, I should have. I think a lot of people are going to be growing their teams, starting with consultants and freelancers who want to start small and then grow their team over time. So, for example, I was just working with a client who was like, hey, I really want to know how we can integrate AI into our current tech stack. And so I came in and I was like, okay, let me take a look at what you've got. Let me take a look at what you're trying to do with your data and all these things. And so I looked at it, I was like, okay, you have your infrastructure is fairly good. You have a few pipelines that are moving, but it's not crazy advanced. I was like, and I kind of pinpointed some of the areas that I think needed improvement in order to start utilizing AI, especially in the coming months or in the future. And so I said specifically, I really think you need to hire on a data engineer who knows AI for this use case. And I've recommended data analysts for other use cases and data scientists for other use cases. But this one, I was like, you need a data engineer who also knows like AI and the upcoming technologies. And so right now they're looking for a consultant who they can bring in, not somebody who they're going to hire on full time. So they're looking at freelancers and consultants. This, I think, is going to be a huge trend in the future where companies are going to see the value of AI and they're going to be like, wait a second, our competitors are doing that. Right down the road, this other company is doing it and they're, seeing this impact. We need to have this, but we don't currently have the budget. We need to start small. Start with a freelancer. Start with somebody to come in. That's kind of what I mean by it's going to spread to those small companies quickly, and then they'll have to grow over time that infrastructure. Now, if you look at, I'm not going to go crazy technical about it, although I could because I love this stuff. Current data architecture is really great for current data products, for Power BI, and for all these different things. But when you think about what you need it for in the future with AI, it's going to be different. We're going to have different tech stacks. We're going to have different tools. We'll have different data architecture. And the companies right now, most companies right now are not even at current technology. They're 5 years behind. They're 10 years behind because they don't invest in their infrastructure as much as they probably should. For example, I've worked with many companies over the past year now, and I'm like, okay, you guys are still using on prem servers, which is fine. I have nothing, and there's actually great use cases for on prem servers. I was like, why haven't you moved to the cloud yet? Like, it's too expensive, or it's too complicated, or it costs a lot of money to migrate our data over there, or we have these dependencies on our on premise servers, and so we don't feel like we can do it. And I'm like, okay, I hear you on those things, but what's going to happen in 2, 3, 4 years when you need to do X, Y, Z? And they're like, well, we haven't thought about that yet. I'm like, well, you need to start thinking about that because it's going to happen. Like it's coming. Um, and so it's not just a plug and play with AI. It's an investment in the future of AI, and so there's a lot that goes on with that. And so most laymen, most people, just people who have an MBA, people who went to like a business school or went to school for really almost anything else, if they don't understand this or don't have experience using data, creating pipelines, connecting data sources, all these things that AI have to have, AI is not just going to be able to magically do it for you. It's going to take a lot of work and a lot of investment in that infrastructure. And AI soon might be like you'll be able to use it with your current data architecture, but especially as it gets more advanced, it's going to take a lot more than what you currently have, and you're going to have to upgrade. So all that to say, I'm going on a tangent on just that one point. It's a lot more complicated than what most people are going to be able to handle. So they're going to have to hire on consultants, freelancers to come in, especially at smaller companies who haven't really used them before, to invest in that. Some medium sized, large, they already have data teams. They'll just bring in someone or they'll hire someone on full time for their AI initiatives to help them, plan for the future. That's in my opinion, for a lot of people that I've talked to who are analytics specific, directors, managers who I know personally, that's essentially what they're saying too. They're like, yeah, we're not 100% sure, but I'm already talking with our CTO about investing in something AI related. We just want to bring in like a consultant to get us up to speed and how we can do this. So that's that point. Um,
Sorry, Alex, I wanted to
Go for
kind
it.
of comment on that. And there's a few questions from the chat as well. So,
Sure.
first of all, like everything you've said I was just like nodding my head the entire time because 100% seeing this. And it's not just seeing this in a way because we're building our own products as well. And it's like, it makes a lot of sense, right? Especially in this day and age, hiring on people as a freelancer, people coming in with a certain skill set, potentially turning into full time later, right? It
Yeah.
makes a lot more sense, especially in this economy as well, as opposed to just hiring people full on and then just hoping that they have like the correct skill sets or trying to train them in doing that. So I've been seeing this everywhere from the people I talk to with Lonely Octopus, the companies that we work with. That's where their head is at as well. It's like want to
Yeah.
incorporate AI in some fashion
Yeah.
into their companies, but they're not ready to just like straight out invest in it, right? Besides, AI is so new. Like, who are you going to hire that you can just say, like, very confidently, this person's going to come in and build an AI team? Like, you first got to
Yeah.
figure out what that even means. Like, what's that specific use case for a specific company? I also really
Mhm.
agree with you on the sense that data teams are going to be a lot more of a staple because it's not really like a one size fit all kind of deal. I think people have this misconception who haven't used AI extensively. It's like, oh, like AI is just gonna come in and do everything for you. No, like it has to be adjusted to a specific use case. Like an example that I like to give a lot is say you're a healthcare clinic, right? You cannot go and just generate content, for example, or like, do things without considering privacy matters. So those privacy matters are going to be very specific to your specific company. And similarly to other companies, to other things that they care about, AI in some ways is actually like a very small component. It is that part may be static. You could be fine tuning it, but even if you're just directly like using that part of AI, it's the things, the architecture surrounding that, all the things, the checks that are built in, how it is that you're monitoring AI, making sure it doesn't just go and do things that you don't want it to do. Those data infrastructures, engineering infrastructures is I think where a lot of that investment is happening right now.
Yeah.
So kind of just wanted to like add on to that point. So absolutely, I 100% agree. Like freelancing is just huge right now. And anybody that has like AI skills, like honestly, anybody that has data and AI skills right now, let's just say like the bar is low right now. So learning these skill sets is so important. And
Yeah,
just like putting yourself out there talking about these topics, people get reach outs about it because there's just not that many people who have the specific skill set yet. So if it's something that you're interested in doing and you're like, is it too late to learn about this? Absolutely not. Like this is the time to
crazy
learn
early.
these skills and you'll be at the cutting edge of
Yeah.
where it is that companies are looking for.
You'll tell your
So
kids in 20 years, you'll be like, I was one of the first people using AI at my company, and they're going to be like, their mind's going to be blown. It's crazy, crazy early. Yeah, yeah, there's absolutely there should be no thought in your mind that you're too late. There's hardly any people in the actual workplace right now that are utilizing AI because the products aren't there yet. And so if you start using it now, start getting familiar with it, when these kind of enterprise level AI products come out, you can be one of the first people to start using it. Yeah, you'll be set. You'll be doing really good.
I agree. So there's a few questions from the chat. It's
Let's do it.
what would be your advice who wants to change his or her career path to data science after 35 years with no experience? So would you recommend, for example, Alex, learning about like going down like I think we're aligned on that, like still learning about this, but then also learning about the infrastructure, how it is that data and AI, there's a crossover there. Is that what you would recommend?
After 35 years, is that what the question was?
Yeah, so they've been someone who's in the beginning wants to change his or her career path to data science after 35 years with no experience. So someone who's trying to get into that field right now, what would your recommendation be in terms of learning those data skills and how like what kind of AI skills should they be learning?
Gotcha. Okay. So I did a live stream the other day. I had a super similar question. And so I'll give you essentially the same answer, which is, you've been doing something for 35 years. Age on some level does play a factor. When you get to a certain age, there are expectations that you know things, right? That you're experienced and you know things. And so, my recommendation, especially if you're a little bit older, is that hopefully you've been in a field that has some type of domain experience that you can utilize, whether it's healthcare, finance, construction, agriculture, it could be anything. So if you know in-depth knowledge about that and you're trying to move to the data side, learning skills like, well, if you're doing data science, maybe a little bit different, but for data analytics, SQL, Excel, uh, Python, Tableau, AI, and how you can use those with those things. Um, that this technical skills are probably not going to be what sells you as much as your domain knowledge. For example, when I was working back in my healthcare company, or my healthcare analytics company, we would hire on nurses who were nurses for 30 years, but knew the data inside and out because they were on the front lines, or doctors who were, just doctors for 25 years, and they were switching over to the data side of things. And because of their domain knowledge, they were super, super smart in what they did. They just had to learn some of the data skills. They just had to learn how the data sits and how it's stored and what it actually means, being able to interpret it. That domain experience is what really sets you apart from other people, and can help you make those transitions. Oh, you muted.
Oh, sorry. I was
There
just
you go.
saying, thank you for that. Should we move on? I'll also be trying my best to answer questions in the chat. So please be patient with me. I'm trying to multitask a little bit here.
Yeah,
So should
yeah.
we
I'll
move
keep
on?
going. Oh, it's only 12:30. I got so much time. I'm booking it, but I'm also got plenty of time. Okay. The next thing is, uh, in the future going forward, there's going to be a lot of AI augmented analytics tools. Now, I'm just going to read this and I'll kind of talk about what that is. That's going to help provide real time suggestions and automations to analysts as they work. This is referring to AI integrated systems. Now, I just went out to the SaaS conference out in Las Vegas. They literally had a booth on AI augmented analytics, which I had already kind of been somewhat familiar with, but they just kind of talked about how this works or what it looks like. And it's not just SaaS, right? It's all these big companies are creating tools like this that are going to be integrated. The one I'm always going to keep referencing is Microsoft Copilot, although there are tons out there. But Copilot is the one that most people are familiar with. And that's where you're going to have Excel, but you'll have AI just on a little sidebar. And when you need it, you You just go in and you type it. It's going to offer suggestions. It's going to offer, you're going to say, hey, how can I automate this with a macro? And it's going to kind of explain it to you and maybe even do it for you in the future. Who knows? But you'll be able to be working and using AI in the same system. So as you are trying to dive into a client comes to you, says, hey, here's what we're trying to solve with our data. We're having these gaps and we don't know how to solve it. We don't know what to do. Can you give us some insight into this? Now, you having the domain knowledge and the analytics experience, that's why they're asking you. You go in and you start looking at everything, doing everything. You start asking it questions, and you're like, okay, I'm seeing this. And you ask AI, hey, how does this line up? Because this is what I'm seeing. It'll give you suggestions or things that should prompt you. And people can already do this a little bit with ChatGPT, but it's just not as it's not as super helpful because it's not integrated. It's not there looking at your data. You have to copy over the data. It doesn't have all the context and all the information. And so it gets some things wrong, but it gives good suggestions. Imagine that, but just even better. That's what this is going to look like. It's going to be, really kind of like a little assistant at your side at all times. In my opinion, because I've been actually using ChatGPT or different, I've been using a little bit of Bard, a little bit of Claude. I've been trying these out with my workflow, and they're very helpful. But I have seen so many downsides. I'm just like, oh, geez, it does not do this well. It just is. But I'm hoping it'll be even better in the future. Because for me personally, I do not see it as it coming for my job, especially as how much I've been using it. I'm like, okay, this is not close yet. But how it could be used in the future, I absolutely see it being really, really helpful with our work. So giving a lot of suggestions, automations. So something I mentioned that we currently do now, or in the previous slide, was we build dashboards and reports. That's a lot of what data analysts do for their end product. Now we do a lot more before that with data cleaning and exploring the data, and then working with data engineers and data scientists to help create those transformations in the ETL process. There's a lot that data analysts do, but for that last piece, the last mile of creating the dashboards and reports, we finally did all that pre-work. We're about to send it off to the client. We build these things. And I think that not yet, but very soon in the next year or two, creating dashboards and reports will probably be one of the easier parts of being a data analyst. I don't think you're going to need to invest as much time into learning things like Tableau, because Tableau is going to be coming out with some AI stuff. Power BI is going to be coming out with some AI stuff. I don't think you're going to have to invest as much time learning those skills as you will more of the concepts of data modeling, data cleaning, data exploration, ETL process. Those more complex things that have a lot more nuance. Dashboards and reports, I think, very soon, and I've already seen demos from different companies, you're just going to type in, hey, I need a chart displaying this information. It's going to pop it up for you. Now, is it going to be perfect? Probably not, but it'll get you 70% of the way there. And then what you need to go in and do is just do that last 30%, or maybe the last 20%, or in the future, 10%, where you just need to change some things, send it over to the client. They're like, okay, yeah, that's good, but we actually want this. And you go and you revise that and you finalize it and you're good to go. So I think a lot of the dashboards and reports in the future aren't going to be as heavy of what a data analyst may do, although it still will be something that we're probably in charge of. And so that is a lot of upfront help with the initial development, but then we still need to be there to finish it. And then the next thing, companies will have to upgrade current architecture for more advanced AI. Now, this is what I was just talking about on the last slide. Is the exact same thing. And so just to highlight this again, is that our current architecture is, I want to say good, but for some companies it's not good. But AI requires data. They require a lot of information with even things like, it's on the top of my tongue, data documentation. A lot of companies don't document anything. You would be surprised at how many companies I've come into or worked for in the past, like as a data analyst, that had absolutely no architecture, no systems in place for what they actually do. It was all in their head. Everybody knew everything, but none of it had been documented. So even when I say architecture, that's usually referring to database schemas, how your database pipelines are flowing. This can also refer to just your processes of your company, which are going to be more important in the future. because AI is going to take those things into consideration. You'll give outlines. Hey, here's how all of our data comes in. Here are the sources. Here's the oh geez, I'm blanking on words today. It's a data dictionary. So you have this data dictionary that tells you exactly what these columns are, exactly what the data is. It can understand if the data is messy or if there's something wrong with the data. But it needs a lot of context and a lot of really good building of infrastructure, which most companies, I would say the majority of companies, 70 to 80% plus, don't have a great data infrastructure for even today's purposes, but especially not for AI. So that's just, again, that's kind of what I'm talking about with they're going to need people to come in. They're like, what I know this is already happening, but it's going to happen more, which is a company's going to be like, we need to use AI. Let's start using AI. All right, guys, let's start this AI initiative. And they start trying to do it, and then they don't get the results they wanted at all. Like they're getting, their results are like 50% of what they want. Like 50% is spitting out somewhat good content, 50% is giving out nonsense that makes no sense, and they don't know why. They're going to have to hire people on who know more than them, who can come in and be like, oh, that's because of this. Your data is sitting like this. It needs to be sitting like this. So there's a lot of nuance that the vast majority of people don't know or don't understand yet. So that's where we are in the next 10 years. Now, let me explain actually what last thing on this slide. Let me explain why I'm talking about the next 10 years and why I'm not talking about 5, 4, or 3 years, which a lot of people think. The reason for this is actually somewhat what I was talking about a little bit ago, is that the assumption for people who are saying it's going to be in 2 years, it'll be completely different, have never worked in depth at an actual company before, in my opinion, because I've worked at a lot of companies. I've consulted for a lot of companies, and goodness gracious, most are not anywhere near being where they need to be. Like I was talking about earlier with on-prem versus the cloud, there has to be an investment in money, talent, and there has to be a purpose-driven company that's actually making those efforts to upgrade their technology over the years. Now, I worked in healthcare, and it is semi-laughable how behind healthcare is with their tech stack. In fact, it's kind of like a running joke in the healthcare data world that the healthcare is always 15 years behind with technology. And it's not a joke, it is real. So I have to imagine just the entire healthcare sector, which is like hundreds of billions of dollars per year, just in probably more, like let's say $1 trillion a year in revenue just in the United States for healthcare companies. Someone Google that for me, because it's probably way off. You have to imagine these companies, a lot of these companies are very behind. Even the company that I used to work for, that was a Fortune 10 company, we were just when I was getting there transitioning to the cloud, like just making the first steps. I helped with that transition. Then I got hired as an analytics manager to help migrate our entire IT department to Azure. And so weird, like you have to imagine we're behind, right? So think about it 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. Jeff Dean shared this. I don't know who Jeff Dean is. Sounds like a smart guy though. I've never heard that name. Sorry. But if you,
Okay, he's the big shot at Google.
oh sweet, yeah. Hey,
Yeah.
share his LinkedIn and his like whatever,
Yeah,
whoever's
do
in
you
the
guys have the
YouTube.
post for this? Because I had no idea, like who, I had no idea he shared it. Um, is it the same
Yeah.
one that I'm thinking of? Because that's Google DeepMind, chief
Oh, that's awesome.
scientist. So
Yeah, share
please
that with me.
share the
Share that with
link.
me because I've never heard of him.
Yeah, but if anybody is here for Jeff, I apologize that we really had no idea he's not going to be speaking, that I'm aware of at least, and that Alex is aware of. That's why I just asked him. So sorry to disappoint here, but we got to thank him for sharing it. Yeah, he's the top Google fellow.
Cool.
Um, awesome. Sorry to interrupt.
No, that's fine. Yeah. So wait, just one clarification. So he was saying very similar things. Is that, or he was saying just that on that very topic?
I don't know. So yeah, like, can anybody? Are you guys able to share links? You might not be able to share links, but if you could, we just migrated though. I'm like, I mean, I'll check. Is like, wait, I'm gonna just is it this guy? I mean, yeah. I had no idea. So, is it this guy? So I'm not sure if
Wait,
you
are you?
guys can share links. Um, yeah, he's the top Google fellow.
Okay.
Yeah, apparently a bunch of you guys came from Jeff Dean. All right, Alex, we better put on a good show. I'm kidding.
Oh, wait, people were here to see Jeff Dean?
Yeah, apparently he just shared a link to the stream.
Oh,
And
sweet.
people thought that Jeff Dean was here, but apparently he
Okay.
just shared
Oh,
it.
gotcha.
Like,
Very cool.
well, yeah, people were asking
Hey,
about it.
Jeff Dean, I appreciate you, man. If you're out there, thank you. I appreciate it.
I
All right,
appreciate
so
it
let's
as
keep.
well.
Yeah, yeah. So let's keep, so yeah, I'm not gonna keep harping on that, but that is my thoughts on the next 10 years. That's why I don't think it's gonna happen in 3 to 5 years. I'm talking about 10-year span, because a lot of companies are gonna need to spend a lot of money. And like you were talking about earlier, especially in this economy, um, it's hard to invest. It's hard to invest a lot of money if your business is already working. But in 2 to 3 years, in that 5 year span, when AI is really ramping up and becoming a lot more integrated with a lot more companies, there's going to be not a lot of reason to, there's not going to be a great reason to not invest in it. It's actually going to make, put a lot of companies behind and they're going to see that. So in like 3 to 5 years, I think companies are really going to start investing a lot more into it. And then in about the 10-year span, you'll see most companies having some AI integrated with them. It's just, it takes a long time for companies to catch up. It really does. But you can go to the next one now because the next one I think is the most interesting. This is a long-term guess, and this is not just my own. Again, I want to reiterate. I've talked to a lot of people on this, and so when some of these things are not my original ideas, but then we would chat about it and we'd go have some back and forth. So these are some of the ideas of my community that I've talked with about this. So this is looking beyond. This is like 10 years plus, and I keep hitting my.
Wait, Alex, I don't know if you died or I died. Wait, Alex, I think you died. Yeah, Alex, your mic. Let's see on Riverside. I think you hit your mic and something happened. A little break. Well, in that as I Alex figures out his mic situation, I will continue to look at some of the questions that are here. Also, thanks to everyone for asking so many questions. I apologize. I am trying my best to answer all of them. Um,
Can you hear me?
Yep, we're good now.
Oh,
So here's
sweet.
a
Sorry about that.
question. Thank you, Lloyd, for the donation. I've got VBA, Tableau, SQL, and some Python. I work in staffing industry, but I explore stock data in my free time. What steps must I take as someone who wants to incorporate AI into their life/career? We can hear you,
Is that a
Alex. You
question for
want to take
me?
this one?
I yeah, it's really interesting right now because everyone wants to know how they can use AI. There's not a lot out there, right? I say that on like there's not a lot of integrated solutions right now. There's a lot of tools. So you can go and use ChatGPT or Bard or Claude. Those are simple. There are other ones as well that are being built. And you can just Google it. Like say, look up AI tool for healthcare. There is one out there. I've looked at it. So you can look at all these tools and start messing around with them. For me, how I've been using it is I'm like, okay, I, I know I want to write something for SQL, and I will plug in, kind of like my columns or something, or like a little sample of the data, and I'll ask it to generate it. It'll try to generate it. It'll get me like 90% of the way there, and then I revise it a little bit. That's how I have to do it right now. But if I'm writing Python, I use there's AI already integrated with Python for a lot of tools, like Visual Studio Code. I use GitHub Copilot. So there's a lot of different things that you can use. Just got to find one out there for you, but there's lots out there. But it's not as like crazy integrated as what I'm talking about, like on the last slide, where it's like in there, it's integrated, it's like working perfectly. That's kind of this looking beyond section right here.
Yeah, I'm gonna kind of comment on that a little bit. So from my just to kind of clarify, so I'm coming from more of a like data science and even like some engineering, data engineering, engineering based perspective, right? So I would agree in terms of integrated solution, not that many. I think people are just trying to figure out what to do right now. It's like there's a lot of startups that are still like, this is like the solution for this. And then if you actually use their thing, I'm like, that is not the solution for that. Maybe it's like
Yeah.
a single solution. However, with that being said though, I think these are fundamental like skill sets that you should learn about AI right now as a data analyst. But I think, again, I'm coming from more the perspective from an engineering perspective, as well as a data science perspective. So I talked about this before, but in terms of, I think I answered this in the chat. So prompt engineering, right? If you're going to do anything, learn prompt engineering and just understand how to communicate with AI. This is like a very basic skill, and it's like almost a different mindset, right? Because when you're doing prompt engineering, when you're communicating with AI, there are certain ways of communicating with it, mindset shifts in communicating with it, which I'm not going to go into too much detail, maybe in the Q&A, that you need to learn how to interact. So with that unlocks a lot of potential. Even if you're just chatting with ChatGPT, for example, if you know how to prompt engineer and how to interact with AI, know what it is that it can do for you, it can do a lot. Now, from an engineering perspective, this is something that we've seen a lot in the freelance projects from Lonely Octopus. There are like a lot of companies trying to integrate AI into their companies right now. And the fundamental like skill set that I think people should have if they want to learn how to use these new tools is not necessarily going to these integrated solutions, which as we were saying, it's like not really there yet, but go to the basics, right? The basics of prompt engineering. How do you use these large language models through APIs, like for example, the APIs for OpenAI, right? That's how you can interface with some of these models. And then on top of that, how do you build like a UI around that? There's certain, so that you're able to display certain responses that you're getting in certain interactions. How do you go through and play around so that you're setting different like system settings for how you're communicating with the AI, as well as databases and LangChain. I would say these are like fundamental, more engineering based things that are really important to learn, because these are the solutions that companies are looking for right now. And as you play around with these technologies, you will find that so much opens up to you. It is so much more than just interacting with ChatGPT directly. The ability, yeah, like the ability to build certain products, the way that you can use these solutions. I use it in my own life as well. Like I have some like silly scripts that I have where I'm able to set like a certain tone for the large language model to communicate with me, a certain like interfaces, very, very simple UIs for this. I'm incorporating my own personal data by using LangChain. All of these things, I really recommend just going to the basics. That was my rant.
I agree with everything. In fact, that is something that I'm going to mention a little bit about the future of data analysis 10 years and beyond. A little bit uh, at the very bottom is what I'm going to talk about that. But I completely agree that with everything you just said. Very, very good. All right, do you want me to keep going?
Yes, please keep going.
Oh boy, it's 12:50. We may run over, and I'm okay with running over if you are.
Yeah, let's say the maximum we run over is maybe like 20 minutes or so, just so I know it's a
Okay.
Friday as well.
All
So
right.
don't want to
I've
make
told you.
people choose
I could talk about
between.
this for hours. I'll speed through this section. But this is the most interesting one to me. Now, previously or currently, medium to large companies, in the next 10 years, small, medium, large companies will have it. Then looking beyond. To start, every company is going to be somewhat reliant for some processes in their company on AI. That's my prediction. Um, AI is going to increase speed, accuracy, and overall product or whatever you're building. I really think it's going to be that big. But with that comes a lot of things, right? It's not, as we talked about in the last one. That's a lot of what we talked about just a little bit ago is going to be even more so in the future. So think about it with just a data analyst. We're creating dashboards, reports, might be helping with data pipelines, insights. In the future, a lot of this can be done with the assistance of AI. Now, even right now, I'm sure you keep up with this stuff, but even right now, you look at things like AI agents. If you're privy, or whoever's listening, if you've heard about that, if you haven't, go on Twitter. There's some great people who talk about AI agents. Not only that, but just being able to generate really good code. Um, in the future, you are going to have, once that infrastructure is laid over the next 10 years, people are really investing in this infrastructure. They're investing in documentation, creating great data dictionaries, create processes and procedures, all these things that AI is going to ingest. When we are trying to then build dashboards, reports, data pipelines, insights, all these things, it's going to have a pretty good idea. Now, will it get 100% right? Probably not, right? And that's not going to be most likely the purpose of AI. It's going to be getting your job done a lot faster so you can do more work. But you are still going to be needed to interpret what AI is saying, making sure that you're prompting it correctly, making sure that you're asking the right questions, making sure that what it's giving you is actually accurate, and validating those results. These are all things that data professionals, whether it's in data engineering, making sure the data is actually getting in properly, setting up monitoring systems to make sure that AI is doing what it's supposed to be doing, all the way down to data scientists and data analysts using the data for whatever they're using it for. These are things that you are still going to need to be monitored, tested, QA'd, and have a final say in. I don't see, and I say looking beyond, it's kind of indefinite, right? But I'm thinking like 20 years down the road. Even 20 years down the road, I still imagine and still, um, I'm quite confident that humans are still going to be kind of the final say, right? We're not just going to ask AI and it's going to be like, oh, that is the answer. We can know it without a shadow of a doubt. Most likely, we're still going to need quite a bit of interaction and checking and QA and all these things. Um, Now, the next part I talked about quite a bit, so I won't go crazy in depth. The last one is actually the one I'm most excited to talk about, and kind of talked a little bit about what you were uh, talking about earlier. But this one says the infrastructure needed for AI will be crucial, and we'll need data engineers, analysts, project managers, and more for good results. Um, it's the human condition for anything data related. Um, Data is only as good as, or the AI that's going to be producing any results is only as good as the humans that are producing the data. I think about healthcare all the time because I'm in healthcare, but I know this is similar for a lot of other people. But when I worked really closely with healthcare, we had the messiest data you could ever imagine. That's because of the systems where the doctor was inputting something freehand, or he was having someone translate it after he wrote it on paper. His assistant was translating it and putting it into their system. These are things that I would consider the human condition, right? We're always going to mess something up. We're always going to, cause issues. Um, and so it's going to be really important that data engineers, analysts, project managers work together, even just as they do now, but even more so in the future, to really make sure that the entire pipeline from the creation of the data all the way into the database, data warehouse, data lake, wherever you're storing it, that it is seamless. And that is very, 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 very difficult to do. Even today, even at big companies that have thousands of engineers, there's still bad data. It just happens. And so you're still going to need a lot of these people to ensure that the data is good so that your output from these AI systems are really good. You're going to have to check them, double check them, and then, we'll go on from there. So that's kind of in the future, like 15, 20 years down the road. I see AI being really, really integrated, but still needing a lot of work. Still a lot of hands-on people doing these things, but just AI helping out a lot. Now, when I talk about AI, I've been kind of in this whole conversation, I'm talking about almost general AI, general, Chat GPT type use cases. I don't think, and I this is something that I've actually done a lot of research on, so this isn't my thought, but I've been thinking about it for a long time, which is we're not going to have a one AI system, or we're not going to have one AI system that does it all. And not every company is going to plug in ChatGPT, which is what they're doing now for a lot of things, and it works to an extent, and it's really impressive. But when you get down to the nitty gritty, when you get down to the so many specifics, and you need like an expert of an expert on in this domain, we're going to have tailored AIs for your company, for your domain. So I keep using healthcare, so I'm going to keep going. We need at companies that I worked at, I can imagine using an AI that was trained specifically on our data, that knows it inside and out very, very well, and then is already pre-trained. Maybe we buy it from a company that pre-trained it to be basically like as smart as the smartest doctor in the world or the smartest nurses in the world, and we use that as like that's who we're able to work with. And this is going to be really, really, really important in the future because we want it to be for us. Those general AIs are great. I use them a lot myself. I already see a lot of limitations with them that I've used and I've personally encountered. And I'm like, oh geez, there are a lot of limitations. But when you only need it for a specific use case, let's say you're predicting outcomes for a patient. That was a company that I used to work with when I was first starting out. We would create this logic, and we would predict, okay, what percentage likely is this person based off all these factors to have a heart attack. Then the doctor would say, okay, if that's over, a certain percentage, he's going to then test for some cardiovascular disease, or he's going to do these extra tests. That stuff is going to become a lot more popular, especially in healthcare. And you can imagine, I don't want a general AI doing that kind of knows it. I want an AI that's only trained on just that. That's going to get it right 99% of the time instead of 94% of the time or 93. That accuracy has to be there because that's life and death when you're dealing with healthcare in some instances. Now, for this, the data analyst based positions are going to become a lot more niche. Now, there's already ones out there: healthcare analyst, financial analyst, marketing analyst. I think you're going to see a huge rise in those because most companies aren't going to need just a general data analyst to do the technical skills. They'll need someone to know the technical skills. I don't think that's going away anytime soon. But I do see the need that they're going to need somebody who's a lot more knows a lot more of a specified domain really well, and also knows the technical skills because AI is going to help with the technical skills, I think, a lot more than it's going to help with the domain knowledge. And so in the future, this is looking beyond, this is 15, 20 years down the road. I think that we'll see a huge uptick in domain specific AI analysts who are going to be using AI in their workflow. And they're not going to probably call it AI analyst. It'll just be an expectation at that point. They'll just call it healthcare analyst, need to know AI in the job description, right? But I think you'll see a huge uptick in that. And that'll be kind of an expectation that you are going to be using AI for a lot of the technical stuff for building things, and it's going to be integrated into the workflow. But we need you to not only use AI with the technical things, because that's going to be not crazy difficult at that point, but we need you for your brain and your in-depth knowledge of that domain. That's what we really need you for. And so that's to me, that piece right there, especially for data analysts, that's probably one of the biggest takeaways that I take out of all of this is technical skills, you need them. You have to have them. They're going to be an expectation, and AI is going to help a lot with that. But if you have expertise in a domain, if you go to school for, nursing, or you go to school for finance, or you go to school for construction or agriculture or whatever it is, that domain knowledge combined with AI makes you way more important than just someone who knows the technical skills, which AI is going to help a lot more with anyways. So, I've been talking about this on my channel for probably the past year or two, is that technical skills are always going to be important. Try to find a domain that you like and you enjoy, and that you can learn really in depth. Find a mentor that can help you, who can teach you the ins and outs of the industry. Find somebody who's, who just you can chat with on LinkedIn or on Twitter, or somebody who inspires you and reach out to them. That's how you can find these mentors, and you can kind of get connected to an industry that can really set you apart from other people. So that is the looking beyond section. I tried to keep this somewhat succinct because we are short on time. I know we have a QA section, but that is my current short-term future and long-term future with AI and analytics. And a lot's going to change, but it's not changing as fast as I think most people are thinking. It's going to change quick, but people will be able to keep up with it. My last note before I pass it back over to you, and this is just a really bad analogy, but it makes sense in my head, so I'm going to share it anyways, is, before the pandemic, if you bought a house, you're sitting pretty because that home value has increased, and now it's really tough to buy a home right now, right? I see it the same way with AI. Right now, we're at pre-pandemic. We're at just the beginning. You buy into this AI stuff now, you start investing in it, learning it. 3 years down the road, it's going to be amazing for you, but for the people who didn't learn it, who weren't investing in it, didn't care about it 3 years ago, it's going to be really tough for them to break in and start using it in 3 years and be like, okay, I'm just now learning it. Whereas you could have had years of expertise and actually digging into it and figuring it out. So don't get left behind. I myself am not trying to get left behind. Don't get left behind. Start, using AI, start learning AI, looking into it. You don't have to be the biggest expert in the world, but start learning. That's my last piece.
Thank you, Alex. I'm gonna add on to that a little bit because I cannot
Please do.
resist myself in doing so. Like, yeah, I want to say from a business perspective, like looking at enterprises, working with other companies that are again trying to incorporate AI into their work streams, that this is where I'm coming from. So 100% agree with you on all of these things. One of the biggest factors is, you know how like a lot of companies just ban ChatGPT when they come out? Understandably so, because they don't understand
Yeah.
it and they're afraid of issues that are coming up. But I think this is it showcases the human reflex very much so.
Yeah.
I don't understand something, I am scared of it, so I'm going to run away from it.
Yeah.
Instead, you need to bypass that instinct. I don't understand it. This is something that's clearly very powerful. I need to learn more about it. It's like instead of being afraid of something and running away, you need to approach it, understand how do I incorporate this into my
Yeah.
work stream? And that is what sets apart someone who really catches on and takes advantage of new technologies and creates opportunities for themselves and other people, as opposed to someone who is just kind of like following the crowd. I genuinely think this. And I also wanted to add, like, in terms of the infrastructure needed for I think from a data science perspective and from an engineering perspective, I think there's a much bigger requirement now for people to have technical skills, just like Alex was mentioning from an analytics perspective, especially the
Yeah.
use of development. Like, how do you use APIs? Like, APIs are huge right now. Like, before,
Yeah.
say, as a data scientist, sometimes you're just like tinkering with things by yourself and you make a model, you launch it, all these things. But so much of it now is, how do I use these open AIs, these like open AI API, for example, or like these APIs that are out there, the large language models that are out there, how do I use those things instead of just trying to build something myself? Like, nobody is going to go build their large language model in most cases. It's about how do I use it? How do I incorporate technologies like LangChain? Again, this is from like engineering. These are traditionally engineering things, but data scientists are very much required now, especially going into the future, to understand how to use these engineering things. Like, you can't get away with, oh, like, I'm a data scientist, I'm gonna make my own models and just like not just work in isolation. It doesn't work
Mhm.
like that anymore. Especially if you're working at a medium-sized to smaller company, this is where a lot of your job is going to be like full stack. There's going to be things that are coming up where you're expected to deal with engineering problems. So if anybody's out there interested in a data domain, and if the biggest question is like, how do I change the trajectory of what I'm learning for the future? That's what I recommend. Learn about these technologies, but more importantly, learn about these fundamental, traditionally engineering things, because that is where a lot of these companies are headed now.
Yeah.
That was, yeah, that's kind of how I see things. Um, so with that being said, so Alex, you said you were okay staying for a little bit longer, right?
Oh, I got 3 more hours. No, I'm just
You
kidding.
got 3 more hours. Okay. In that case, let's do a little bit more of Q&A.
Okay.
So let's do some Q&A. There were some questions that were popping up. Did you know that Tina in Spanish means bucket? No, I didn't. I didn't know that.
That's valuable.
Thank
That's
you.
insight right there.
Yeah, also, I know I talk really loud, so I'm gonna turn my gain down and move. I have this thing where I just talk really loud, so I'm gonna try to like quiet myself. No, I didn't know that. Thank you for letting me know that. Okay, so let's see. Actually, let's start off with some of the questions from Instagram, and because I did do a poll on there, and then also on LinkedIn and YouTube, there are some great questions. So let me pull that up. AI analytics. Some questions for Alex the Analyst.
These better be good. We only have 15 minutes. These got to be high quality questions.
Okay, we can stay for a little bit longer. You want to say like 30 minutes
I,
max?
I'm fine. I can
Yeah,
keep going.
for 3 hours. I know. um. Okay, some of these. How can I ask his favorite moments of the SAS AI conference?
Saturday AI conference was actually really good, and there was one thing that I almost added it to this because I really loved it. They were talking about um, what's it called? Synthetic data. Now, I loved this because they used healthcare as an example, and it was literally the exact data that I used to work with, which was kidney disease. So I used to work really a lot with kidney disease, heart attacks, oncology, which is cancer, hematology, which is blood. So I used to work with a lot of that, did a lot of studies with that. They literally talked right to me. It was like they were talking to me. They were like, what something that you can do with synthetic data is you can say, hey, AI, create this data for this example that hasn't happened yet, this use case that has never happened, but we want to know what our data would look like and what would happen if it looked like that. AI generates that data. You can test your systems on that data and see how your product, how your outcomes, how everything is going to react to that fake data. That to me almost blew me away. I was like, oh my gosh, I've never thought about that before. But using it on an enterprise level like SaaS, I was like, that's a really great use case. That was probably the biggest thing that I was kind of blown away with AI in SaaS specifically. But I know other companies are going to start doing that because I that is like that is a super 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 great use case for AI. Really really love that. That was my favorite thing.
That's super interesting. Huh.
Yeah. And it's not
Yeah.
just in healthcare. I can imagine that for so many, like imagine financial models. You're using financial models and you're like, let's predict what's going to happen if these things default, or these loans default, or these things happen. Let's run these what if scenarios on this fake data and imagine. Now we can try to mitigate that because we're starting to see this trend or for downward. Let's see what happens if it continues to go downward. Then you can kind of predict for that and mitigate for those financial risks. It was really fascinating.
In terms of like the quality of the data itself, I'm sure we can talk about this forever. Like what safeguards did they have?
Yeah, so they gave like one demonstration, and again, it wasn't crazy good. What they all they would do is the demonstration itself was good. I just didn't get to see like I couldn't see the data. You can't see anything. They just talked about it. So the demonstration itself was really cool, but I can't validate any of it. Essentially, what they did was they said, okay, hey AI that's integrated with this, I want to create some data to see what if this enzyme continues to increase with this patient, and then it produced that, and then they could run it through their systems, and it could predict, mortality rates or kidney disease failure or all these things. Um, that was like the example. Now, in terms of what it was generating, they talked a lot. One of their main focuses was on the reliability and accuracy of the data. That's what they were really focused on that whole time. They talked a ton about it, which was great because they were like, we know it's not super trustworthy right now, AI systems out there. We are trying to create the most trustworthy systems we possibly can. So when you ask for something, it gives it to you, and it shows you what we're doing on the back end so that you can validate that it's accurate. So they're putting all these processes in place to make sure that the AI, whatever AI you're using, you can validate what it's giving you, and if it's wrong, you can correct it. And so it gave an example of that. So to the accuracy of the synthetic data, I don't know, but it was really just the idea of it, which I can totally see it being used in so many use cases. That alone is just a great idea for AI in generating data. I thought it was awesome.
Yeah, I think that is a really, really powerful use case. It's actually kind of similar to like when people are creating models when they don't have enough data, especially in healthcare, where they're
Exactly.
generating a lot of like data based upon the data they do have to train models. So this
Yeah.
is actually good, Manoj. Thank you for this question. So it actually feeds into this. How about the data regulations of GDPR? How will companies handle that part? So in terms of data regulations, I actually really want to touch on this point because remember how we were talking about earlier about building the infrastructure
Yeah.
around using these AI models. It's like not necessarily I go build my AI model and like launch it and do things. It's like how do I build infrastructure around it? And there was another question earlier that addressed this too. It's like why are companies afraid? Right? Why are companies afraid? Like that's a big, and I touched upon this tangentially. They're afraid because you can essentially have a model come in and be hallucinating and tell you like incredible things that you think are real. But if you're putting this into reports, these things are going to be wrong. And think about how scary it is. If you have like one wrong thing and everybody goes like, wow, like this is a very interesting right thing. And then it starts propagating throughout. Right? That's why having like information that's incorrect can be really, really detrimental. And one of the primary reasons why a lot of companies are just like straight out banning it until they can figure out It's a tough problem because there's no ethical things that can be safeguarded for specific use cases. Like ChatGPT and like OpenAI, all these different companies, large language models, they're trying their best to avoid these hallucinations. But even not just hallucinations, that can be an issue. Like for example, within Lonely Octopus, we were building something for a company that wanted to have like an AI chatbot, right? It was like essentially to give walkthroughs, to give hints, these kind of things. How do you get this chatbot to not stray off topic? Like these are very specific things that you need to do. Like how do you make sure that it doesn't just stray off topic and have a conversation that's inappropriate for the platform that you're using? How do you make sure that like when it is communicating like everything, it's like what is it, if you just ask it questions that are outside of the scope of what it usually answers. What is its behavior? These are things that need to be tested empirically as well. A lot of a data scientist's job is to run these experiments as well. So you're not only just like trying to fiddle around with it, like through purely from like fiddling around with what's happening. There's also a lot of application in industry where you're testing out different models, like seeing, making tweaks to it, making tweaks to the prompt, making tweaks to the infrastructure of how it is that AI is being incorporated, and seeing, is this good? Like if I change this, is this good? So a lot of these traditional data science things are still there. They're just being applied in a different way. And you can see large language models as a new type of experimentation that's happening. I hope that made sense. It was a bit of a ramble.
Yeah, that also touches a little, just the ethics and adoption. It also touches a little bit on why I think, and I didn't talk about this, although I've talked about this on a lot of other my live streams, which is companies are companies specifically were banning ChatGPT because ChatGPT was training on that data. They knew that, and they're like, wait, we can't have our data going out there. Now, ChatGPT or OpenAI is releasing an enterprise level, but companies that people trust, like Microsoft and AWS, they're going to have these things in the future, and they may use that or they may wait to see how feedback is. But that inhibits adoption because of that inherent distrust, where they're like, our data is leaking out there, trade secrets, personal data, HIPAA compliance, all these things need to be taken into account, and it's very serious, especially in like the United States and Europe and Canada. Like companies can go bankrupt very quickly by leaking data, selling data that they shouldn't be out there. There are all sorts of regulations and compliance things, and they can get. I mean, my company I used to work for, we had a data leak and it cost us like $500 million. It was like crazy high. That stuff happens, and that's a lot of the concerns around AI is around data leaks, personal data that should not be out there, compliance with regulations. And in places like financial institutions, banks, places like healthcare, it is regulated to death. So you have a lot of hurdles that you need to jump before you start using anything AI. And I think, there was a healthy fear, especially with ChatGPT. I don't think there's going to be as big a fear in the future, especially when large enterprises like Microsoft and Amazon start releasing more secure systems. Um, but that also inhibits adoption, right? So instead of starting now, they may have to wait a year or two to do all their testing, make sure everything's right, then start building infrastructure. That just delays adoption for some companies, especially that are really heavily regulated.
Thank you so much, Alex. And on the chat as well, a lot of agreement on that side. There's just a lot of things that essentially people are figuring out. And if you're someone who's
Yeah.
helping figuring out these things, that can be a really good opportunity for you.
Yeah.
I also did want to mention like one of my favorites. I just think there's a lot of like amazing free resources out there that are just, I'm just like blown away by the quality. So deeplearning.ai is one of my absolute like favorite go-tos. I recommend that to pretty much everyone if you want to get started learning about AI and then learning how to incorporate it and build projects off it. So it's like by far my favorite course from them because it's like simple and it's so powerful. Is this course over here? So I just linked it in the chat. So it's a ChatGPT prompt engineering for developers, and it's only an hour long. So not only does it talk about the process of thinking about prompt engineering, it also talks a lot about like how do you actually approach it by building a product. So a really big part, I think, is people who are just using like interfaces like ChatGPT, and you gotta like think a layer lower than that. If you're actually building something, how do I like use it from a developer's perspective? I think that's a very, very important skill to think about. I think they also do have, yeah, they also do have a really good specialization as well in DAI stuff. So really recommend you checking out those courses. Engineering, there's no debate about his expertise there. Let's see. So early adopters were when? Will this webinar be available to watch? Yes. So the webinar is going to be available. You can watch the playback as well afterwards. So, oh yeah, I also wanted to mention if you want to have like some notes and also like this deck, if somebody mentioned that they were interested in this deck. So there is a email newsletter that you can sign up for, in which we will just email you like notes, specific things for the lunch and learns, and also there's a calendar that you can add in for in the future if you're interested. So the lunch and learns are a weekly thing. They're completely free. They will always be free. And we invite people like Alex, for example. Last week we had a workshop that was from a company of ex Meta AI engineering people. So it's like it really depends on like what it is, like who it is that they're talking about, but it always like centers around the topic of AI and data. And sometimes it's a workshop, sometimes it's a talk. So they're always going to be weekly. Let me just link that if you want to sign up for it. There you go. Thank you for the kind words. I'm currently looking to get the Quest 3 once it comes out. Oh, we were talking about fun fact. I used to work in Oculus back
Super
in the
cool.
day.
Yeah, I just posted about that on LinkedIn and Twitter this morning.
Sorry, who did?
I did.
Oh, you did?
Well,
Did you?
Lex Friedman, who's like the best podcaster in the world. I listen to every single one he puts out, but he did one with Mark, his third one with Mark, and did it completely in the metaverse, but it was now almost not. It wasn't like photorealistic, but it was it's really close. It's come a long, long way. And I just talked about in the thing, I was like, I called that like years ago. I said they're gonna get there, and when they get there, which is like soon, like they're really gonna get there soon. When they get there, it's gonna be like it's gonna be so awesome. And so yeah, I think VR and AR is a super super awesome field. It's really really interesting.
It is. I think especially AR is where it's going to be coming from without going on a huge rant about that. Like working on the products that were there, it was like a huge. So unfortunately, a lot of layoffs that were happening were in that area because it was essentially just like the meta like sinking in so much money, like pouring into it. We used to call like
Yeah.
there's like an internal joke that was like it was like Daddy Duck who was funneling everything, all the money from the ad
Yeah.
revenue into like the
Yeah.
AR and VR sphere. Yeah, like I think the Quest, I never really found like that much in terms of in itself, the market fit wasn't really there. But I think what we can really appreciate is with these companies, like they understand that this product is not going to be like widely adopted, but everything is built upon each other. Like for example, like working with like AR that was built on the VR stuff, it was also built upon Instagram. So a lot of this like things, products that are being built up, it's progressing towards some sort of future in which all of these things are going to be incorporated. Like the glasses, the AR glasses that came out, that was like a really, really big step.
Yeah.
That was from Meta. So I think, yeah, with AR, VR, if I had to bet, I would be betting on the AR side. I think VR is going to be hard to get out of the specific niche use cases, but I would say in
Yeah.
a couple of years, could all be wearing AR glasses. Wouldn't be surprised about that. In my case, I would prefer AR contacts. So maybe that will come out as
I
well.
just saw a video about that the other day, which looked really cool.
AR contacts?
Yeah.
Really? Okay, can you
Yeah,
send me
so
that
it was
video?
like there was like a demonstration of like a very early version of it that was actually working.
Wait, send me. This is so exciting. I'm
I'll have
I'm
to go
so
find
down
it.
for that.
I'll let me make a note. I'll go find it. And send it to you.
How rigorous is the Lonely Octopus selection process? So we do select, it's okay. So I wanted to make a point. This is Lonely Octopus. So it's pinned over there, pinned on the comments. It is for learning AI and data skills to apply to real freelance projects. So first point I want to make is that we are rigorous, not in the sense that you have to learn, you have to know how to code or have to have like all these technological background. We will teach you, we'll meet you where you are with your custom study plans. What we care about more than anything is your ability to learn and your ability to actually like take in to be part of a community. Like, is it a good fit for you to have community-based learning and project-based learning? And even if you don't know how to code, we will literally start with introduction to Python, and we will like go off there. And the freelance projects as well. So we ask people to work on learning projects, apply these skills, and then after you get to a certain point, you can sign up for a freelance project where you're working with a actual company to create a product for them, which is generally from our past cohorts, is what people were really excited about. So yeah, that's how the screening works. Not in terms of your technical skill sets. We don't really care that much about that, but your ability to learn and whether it's a good fit or not in terms of the community-based learning and accountability systems. Thank you for that question. I would like a connector directly in my brain.
Neuralink, it'll be there.
Yeah, I don't doubt that. I think if this, yeah, I don't doubt Elon Musk on that. He just like imagine like many years ago, he's just spewing crazy shit, right? He was just spewing crazy shit about cars, electric cars. Everybody's just like, you're insane. Somehow it happened.
Smart
Lex
guy.
rules. I agree.
Yeah, Lex is the
So,
best.
quick question. If you have AI skills, how do you incorporate domain? Think of it like the reverse of the usual pattern. Interesting. You want to take that, Alex? I
Say
mean,
that one again, because I didn't
oh,
fully
okay.
grasp it.
If you have AI skills, how do you incorporate domain? Think of it like the reverse of the usual pattern. Because like I think a lot of people who transition to data analytics are coming from other fields, I think is what he's
Right.
talking about. And then if you're starting off with like AI skills, how do you incorporate domain? So I'm not sure about analytics. I have an answer for engineering and data science though.
Well, you go ahead because I know what I'll say afterwards.
Okay. I wonder if it's going to be the same. Well, I think the first thing, like, if you have AI skills, what's really cool about this skill set is that if you're like indecisive as a person and you just get bored easily, it's a great skill set to have because you can bounce around everywhere that you want, like different companies that you're working for. Because the domain situation, I would argue that it is easier to learn than the technical skill set. Like, even if you have to be partnered up with someone who has like deeper domain knowledge, about that. So learning the easiest way to learn about this is go get a job. Like seriously, say you have AI skills, which is a very highly desirable skill set. Go get a job in like a tech company. The domain will come. Ask questions a lot. Try to understand like all the jargon that's there, and then make sure that you're talking to people with that domain specialty. And then say you're joining like a healthcare company, you're like, what is a protein, right? I've seen this happen like before. You're coming with like technical skills, just like be willing to learn about what the domain is, and just make sure that you're always talking and partnering up with people who do have domain knowledge. So that would be my answer. I'm curious about yours.
Yeah, somewhat similar. I learned a lot of domain just from working in the field, even before I got into. So I worked at like an ER, and then I worked at in therapy, and so I worked on the like actual provider side where I was providing services. So I learned about that, and then when I started learning the skills, I was like, oh, see, I know the domain already. Now you're kind of doing the opposite. You know the skills. Let's say you know the skills, but you don't have the domain knowledge. Um, I think if you are wanting to utilize those skills, you just have to go find a job somewhere, hopefully in a field that you're interested in. Um, and I'll give you an example. This one always makes me laugh. There was I used to mentor people who are trying to break in analytics, and he just worked in a warehouse, but he had a lot of technical skills, but he just used to work in a warehouse, and he was able to land a job. His second job that he got, he was working at PayPal, and he was working in um, like when people would get refunded money. And he's like, I'm learning more about this process than I ever wanted to. He's like, I actually don't. He's like, this isn't what I want to do with the rest of my life. Because I know way too much about it. So he had the technical skills, and he started that at a small company, just learning some stuff about payments. Then he got that job at PayPal, and he has done really, really well. But he just used those technical skills to land that first job, kind of at a place that would hire him, gain some domain knowledge, and use that to transfer up to a bigger job. And so if you already have a little bit of domain knowledge, and you're interested in it, try to go into it. That's what I did with healthcare. Is I kind of did the opposite. I had healthcare experience, then I went into data. But you can do the opposite. You can be in data and then learn the healthcare.
Cool. Let's see. Well, oh, from Ibrahim, what's the stack used for Analyst Builder? What issues did you face building? And main lessons learned.
That's a great question. I've been working with a fantastic team, really smart people. It's we built everything from scratch. So, oh well, okay, let me not everything. Like we're integrating Stripe for our payments processing. We're not doing that from scratch. But we didn't integrate any course platform. We didn't integrate any editor platform. We built everything, all of that from scratch. That was really interesting, super, super tough, especially getting, it's called a remote code execution engine. So being able to write code in your web interface is not super simple. We also had to build in a checker to make sure your answer is correct, make sure you got the right output. So called a remote code execution engine. That is uh, that was the toughest part of the entire thing. Really, really complex. Everything is built. Our front end is built with React. Our back end, we're going to be using AWS, and that's literally the last thing that we're doing is we're transferring our staging and dev environment over to our production environment. Our staging and dev we were using some cheap thing to host it. So it cost us like 20 bucks a month. But now we're going over to AWS, which when people start using it, it's going to be very expensive. And so we're transferring over to our production environment. So that's going to take a while. So we use AWS for that. We're also using Vercel, and then we're using because we have to store video, so we're using Vimeo for that right now. But I think we're gonna create our own video hosting through AWS to bring down the cost even more because Vimeo is expensive, and especially on the enterprise level, which is what the tier we're at. Because I have like 500 videos on there right now. It's a lot. It's double the videos I have on my YouTube channel. There's so much content on the platform, and I have more on the way. Like I'm still recording. So that's kind of like our general tech stack. But then in the background, we're using Kubernetes, Docker. We're also using we have a Python. You'll be able to write code in Python, MySQL, PostgreSQL, Microsoft SQL Server. So we have backend databases that are in virtual machines that are running those as well. So yeah, I've learned a ton about web development. I've learned a ton about APIs, like you were talking about earlier. APIs are super important. We have an API for everything. Everything's built off APIs. So I'm in like APIs are like our bread and butter on our platform. So that's just some like general overview.
The APIs again, right?
APIs are taking over.
They totally are. Like seriously, if you're
Yeah,
gonna go learn something, learn a REST APIs. Like just learn about what that is and how to use it.
yeah,
It will make your life better.
yeah.
Okay. Let me see. So I just wanted to one check on LinkedIn as well. So if there's any additional questions.
Cool.
So on YouTube, I need to have like a better system. I'm also trying to like figure out the system as well. So bear with me, everybody. To figure out what is like a good way of. Okay, so some questions here. Will a data analyst need to be a data scientist to catch up with AI? That's a very interesting question.
That's a good question. I almost added that to the middle one, which is like the near future. I almost added that because much like this one that can people still see this? The looking beyond.
Yes, you can see it.
Okay, so much like this bottom one, domain analyst positions are going to be because of tailored AI. Now we're going to have to adapt a little bit because data analytics is not going to stay stagnant like it has for the past 15 years. I think it is going to change a little bit. I don't think we'll actually move it closer to data science. I actually think we're going to move a little bit closer to data engineering. Just almost kind of what you were saying earlier. And it is true. Just because of knowing how the data flows, knowing, understanding where the data comes from, how to get it from one place to another. That's a lot of data engineering stuff. But also understanding schemas, understanding how AI is going to be integrated with that. I think data analysts will need to learn a little bit of data engineering skills, which I think kind of like what you said for data scientists, they're going to expect data engineering stuff. I think that is especially at smaller companies that have kind of like a one jack of all trades data analyst they hired. They're going to want someone who can do a lot of that stuff, especially with AI. Some of those data engineering concepts are going to kind of bleed into other areas. I really think that data engineering uh, is going to be bigger than it ever has, although it's already big. I think data engineering is going to be extremely, extremely popular in the future, so much so that they're going to expect data analysts, data scientists, to know a little bit of it as well.
Absolutely, absolutely so. One more question from Philip on LinkedIn. So I have quite a few questions I'd love to hear your opinion on, but the one that interests me the most, from an expert's point of view, what do you think of the idea of citizen developership, process experts using no code like Excel or Power BI, and where do you think AI will support it?
So no code platforms.
Yeah, process experts using no code like Excel or Power BI, and where do you think AI will support it?
So I've used some no code platforms in the past. They it really depends on your use case, but let me tell you some of my experience. I used to use one for my job, and we would always run into some use case where it just didn't work. And the thing about these no code platforms, though, there are some, and luckily the one that we had, there are some that then you can open it up and you can see the code behind it, and then you can edit the code. Now, true no-code platforms where they do not let you do that, in my opinion, are not going to be the future. I don't think that's the way to go because it really limits it. Let's say you have a really specific problem that you just no-code cannot solve. You can't bring in somebody to consult and like fix that issue because you can't see the underlying code. So no-code solutions can get you, let's say even 95% of the way there for some uses. As things get a lot more advanced, I have found that no code is not that great. But if you stick to kind of like whatever that, because there's so many no code solutions out there, whatever your use case is, if it works for like 80, 90% of it, that's great. It can save you a lot of money, a lot of time. But then you're going to encounter something and you're like, we cannot do it with our current thing. And then you'll have to find another solution or whatever. So have one that can open up, you can open up the back end, see how the code is being written, and then change it and save it. Um, that allows that flexibility to bring someone in for harder solutions. But no code is not a bad thing. I am not against no code. I've used it and I see limitations to it. Whereas when I've been coding, I haven't seen limitations. I just see possibilities in the future and joy. That's what I see.
I feel like I'm a little more aggro than you are. Like,
Oh boy.
okay, okay, again, I'm not coming from an analyst. I'm saying like there's
Right.
like low code development from like engineering or data science. So I'm like no, just no, because like I get it, the appeal of doing these things, but so much of your work, like it's just a lot of it's like experimentation, especially with like data science. Like how do you the idea of like even just black boxing experimentation terrifies me because there's so many like specific use cases that you're just like hoping this thing is gonna work out.
Yeah.
And if there's anything about data is that it always surprises you. Like no, I feel like no matter how much experience you have, you're like, I got this. And you look at it, you're like, I didn't think about that. It's
Yeah.
always like that. And on the like, okay, fine. If you're gonna go make like a website and you're like Squarespace, right? Fine. I understand that. But say if you're like actually building things that are more like customized, or like enterprise level stuff, I just don't think no code is, at least right now, like I don't think no code is good. Like I just think the reasoning of like no code is gonna be big, therefore I'm not gonna learn how to code is not gonna fly for at least the next
That I
few.
agree with. That I agree with. No, and it's something that a lot of people I've had a lot of questions. I don't know if this has been asked by somebody, but I'm going to say it anyways. A lot of people have been asking me, why do I even need to learn SQL? Why do I even need to learn Python? Why do I need to learn how to use whatever coding language you're talking about? Now, or there's 100 out there, but why do I need to learn these if we have AI? Let me give you like a super small example, and then I'll just talk about a little bit. So on Analyst Builder, I have, you can check questions and practice technical questions. I have questions that are considered very hard. So I have easy, medium, hard, then very hard. I wanted to see if ChatGPT could solve these problems. And they're not crazy hard. Like when I was working, this is like a medium difficulty. When I was in like the real work, it gets way more difficult and way more complex in the real world. But even ChatGPT was having a really tough, like could not answer these questions. And to me, those are like medium questions, like from a working professional. Now, on an you won't get asked those in interviews, but then expand that a little bit further. In the real world, you are going to run into a lot of things that an AI system is not going to give you the right output. Or it's going to give you an output that works, but is not the optimal way to do it. And that actually is kind of scary because you're going to start people. I've already seen this. This is not just like going to happen. This is happening now, where people will implement systems or code into their current code base that is not optimal and ends up really biting them later on. Or they're like, oh, I didn't know because I just didn't know. I just trusted AI knew what it was saying. So that expertise, especially when I've been using Python, because I've used Python for quite a few things. When I've used Python, I'm like, oh, it's telling me to do this, which works. But I know that it's not the best way to do it just because of my expertise. I've been doing this for many years. And so knowing the skill is going to be important for a long time. Like I was saying in this looking beyond, I said maybe even 20 years, maybe you don't need to know that much. It's not as important. You'll still need to know it. You still, I don't see it going away where you're like, you don't need to know code anymore. Everyone can code. I don't think that's going to be true. I just don't, especially when you're trying to implement things in development uh, environments. It's a lot harder than it looks to just like put code. You can put code somewhere, but then actually implementing it is a lot tougher than it looks. So all these factors, I think coding is like here to stay for a long time, and knowing how to code is here to stay.
100% agree. And from the chat as well, following up, people are asking, let's see, with this very fast change in demand for skill set required, do you think certificates are a way forward to prepare of job market, whereas pursuing degree is still better? So I did answer this in the chat already, but I kind of wanted to repeat that. So I don't actually think it's that much of a fast change in demand, to be honest. I think there's like a transition, at least from data science and engineering stuff, to learn to use more engineering things. But I think again, it's like what I said earlier, going back to the fundamentals, right? If you know how to learn the fundamentals and you understand how things work, these new skill sets that are coming out, these new technologies, it's not actually particularly like absolutely new, right? It's kind of like if you know how coding languages work and you like went through the pain of coding in assembly or C, learning a new coding language is so easy because you understand how it works. Just like if you know how to use REST APIs, just another API to learn is so easy. So these like fundamentals are always going to be coming into play. Statistics, for example, right? If you know statistics, maybe there's a new model that's coming out. Maybe it's like a new thing that's coming out. It's just statistics. It's still statistics. It's just like a different flavor, different application, different iteration of it. And then for these certificates, I don't personally don't think certificates are particularly useful anyway, even right now, in terms of a certificate in itself, because you can get like that certificate. It doesn't really hold that much in terms of an employer because it's like, okay, great. Like you say that you know these skills, you said you did the certificate and it says that you passed it, but it doesn't really like hold that much value. It's more so the project. So I would say certificates, just learn things from certificates. It's also why I recommend like if you're gonna go, Coursera is amazing. It's free, just audit it. And then actually apply them to different projects, especially if you can get like freelance projects or like pro bono consulting based projects. Those are the things that employers are going to be looking at. Like, wow, this person actually knows how to do this. As opposed to if I just write on my thing, like, oh, like I know Lua. And I'm like, do I really know it? Who knows? But if I have a project in which I coded in it, they're like, ah, like this person actually knows it. And in terms of a pursuing degree, I really think traditional education to catch up to the AI stuff at least is gonna take forever, like forever. I think just now, like after like 10 years, they're finding like, huh, we should incorporate data science as a degree. With that being said, though, if you do want to go for a degree, again for like data science, and engineering, data engineering, stuff like that, go for like a computer science or computer engineering degree. Those will teach you a lot of the fundamentals. If you're going for like more research stuff, go for like math and stats. If you, I think double majoring in, like statistics and computer science is like, I think that is like a really, really good combination. What do you think about analytics side, Alex?
Yeah, I'm 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 very biased in this area. I don't think I use my degree in the slightest. I have a degree in recreational therapy. I knowing and it's I'm of course coming from like very biased. I've already been a data analyst, but knowing what I know now about how to break into the and that's what I teach on my channel. That's why I made it. Knowing what I know now, I'm like I could have done this right out of high school. I know I could. I could have learned these skills, taught my skills stuff, all these skills. I could have broken in almost 100% sure. Now, when you're at that place, when you're trying to do it, it seems impossible. But when you're in it, then you're like, oh, this whole, I now see behind the curtains, and you're like, it's a lot, it's not as hard as it looks. Be, saying that, I still think for a lot of people, they may not be as self-motivated, or they may not have the um, ability to self-learn or know the path to go down. And so for some people, something like a data analyst bootcamp might be right for them. Not a lot of people though. I don't recommend them, but some people. For some people, a bachelor's or a master's or a PhD, that's for them. Um, in general, though, I don't really see going beyond a bachelor's for data analytics for most people. So if you're thinking about going and get a master's, you can. It's just a lot of money, and you already should have some type of educational level, some experience before you go for a master's. Um, because I think a master's is very tailored for specific use, and if you're just going straight from a bachelor's to a master's, you don't have any experience, so it's not super useful, at least in my opinion. Certifications, no. For data analytics, there's almost none. Maybe the like Tableau data analyst certification or AWS or Azure data analyst certifications are okay to get, but again, just like you said, they're not that like credible. It's like, whoa, this guy has this certification. We got to hire this guy. This just doesn't happen. The how you talk about it, showing your knowledge in the actual interview, that's what's gonna, really really sell you in an interview and get you a job.
Cool. All right. Thank you so much, Alex. We went over by 42 minutes. So appreciate you staying as well. Think we got through most of the questions that were being asked. If you have any like additional questions about, say, like Alex, like best place to reach you, probably LinkedIn, right? I feel like you answer LinkedIn
Yeah,
very
LinkedIn is
well.
probably the one I respond to the most.
Yeah, and then if they want to learn more about Analyst Builder and everything there, so sign up for the wait list. That's where you're going to be putting all the information, right?
Yes, yeah, and I post stuff online too, so just follow me on every social media platform. Just look for me. I'll be there.
True. Alex the Analyst, yes.
Yeah.
Lonely Octopus as well, if you're interested in anything related to that. You can email me from tina@lonelyoctopus.com. Probably that's by far the easiest way to get to communicate. So cool. All right, thank you again so much, Alex. This has been
You're most
very
welcome. Thanks for
insightful.
having me.
Apparently, it has been shared by fancy people that we did not know about.
Apparently, I'll have to look this guy up.
Yeah, I mean, Ibrahim said he's digging into it, so I'm like, I'm very curious. Because people were saying that they were coming. I'm like, is it sponsored by Jeff Dean? I'm like, not that I'm aware of.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Cool. All right. Thank you everyone for joining, and I will see you guys in the next week's Lunch and Learn. All right. Bye. Okay.
Is this still live?
Stream.